The first time the dean's wife tried to shame me in front of a room full of donors, she was holding a silver serving spoon, and I was standing so still beside the dessert table that people later said I looked carved out of ice. What none of them knew was that by then, I had already spent months learning exactly how hunger can turn silence into a weapon. The smell of buttered rolls still does something strange to me. Even now, when I catch that warm smell drifting out of a kitchen, a part of me goes right back to those campus nights when my stomach cramped so hard I would press my forearm against it and keep smiling at people like I was fine. My name is Zara. I was 20 when that year started, and I was supposed to look like one of those girls who had it together. I had a partial academic scholarship, a campus desk job, decent grades, and the kind of face people assume belongs to someone with a safe home waiting for her over every break. They saw clean sneakers and a planner covered in color tabs. They did not see the overdraft warnings. They did not see me calculating whether laundry money mattered more than dinner. The year before, my housing and meal costs had been mostly covered through a grant tied to a mentorship program. Then the program got restructured, and a polite email told me my support package had changed. That meant my meal plan vanished, my housing credit got cut, and the campus office told me to explore alternative resources, as if those words could be cooked and eaten. My mother was alive, but available would have been a generous word for her. My father had perfected disappearance years before. There was no useful anger I could hold in my hands, just absence. So I did what girls like me always do when there is no one coming. I became efficient. I took the late evening desk shifts nobody wanted in Maple Court. I sold my biology textbook back early and borrowed somebody else's. I stretched one jar of peanut butter so long I started scraping the glass with a spoon handle. I learned which student events left boxed sandwiches unattended near the end. The cafeteria in Halston Hall sat between two freshman dorms and fed hundreds of students a day, which meant swipes at the entrance, cameras over the turnstiles, and staff who knew how to spot outsiders. The first time I got in, it was not because I was brave. It was because I was desperate and lucky at the exact same time. A storm had rolled in that evening, and half the students were arriving soaked and irritated. Somebody dropped a tray near the entrance. Two boys started arguing. The woman working the card station looked up, distracted, and a whole group surged forward at once. I lowered my head, tucked myself beside a laughing cluster of girls, and walked straight through. Just like that. No alarm, no hand on my shoulder, just heat from the dining room, the smell of pasta, and my own pulse banging so loudly I could barely hear the silverware clatter. I took one plate, then another. I ate slowly because I thought fast would make me look guilty. Halfway through, I realized nobody was watching me at all. Every table was crowded. Everyone was busy with themselves. Hunger is humiliating, but invisibility is worse. By mid-semester, I had rules. Never go in at the same hour twice in a row. Never dress too polished on the nights you slip in. Carry something in your hands so your body reads as purposeful. Sit near a group, never alone in the center. Take ordinary food, not favorites. Leave before dessert unless the room is too loud to notice you. My roommate Hadley never knew the full truth. She knew I was figuring food stuff out, and because she came from the kind of family that overnighted care packages, she did what generous girls do when they are young. She offered granola bars. She offered microwave noodles. I loved her for it and hated being seen that way at the same time. One night, she came back from the shower and found me folding cafeteria napkins into my work tote. "Why do you have those?" she asked. "Desk spill." She narrowed her eyes, then laughed. "You look like you're lying, but you also look exhausted, so I'm choosing peace." That should have warned me. Lies have a smell to them. The first crack came through a boy named Griffin. He worked maintenance part-time and sometimes stopped by the Maple Court desk near closing. We started talking in those small, tired pieces of conversation that only happen when two people keep crossing the same empty hallway after midnight. One Thursday, he found me behind the student union tearing the cheese off a leftover event platter because the bread underneath had gone soggy. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with this awful, gentle understanding that made me want to disappear. Then he said very quietly, "Zara." I straightened up so fast I nearly dropped the plate. "It's not what it looks like." He leaned against the doorframe. "You're eating dinner out of a trash-adjacent catering box. It was being thrown away. That is somehow worse." I waited for him to ask why. Instead, he reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded employee meal chit, and held it toward me. "They gave me an extra one after a boiler job," he said. "Take it." "I'm not taking your food." "You are not in a position to make that sentence convincing." I laughed, which was rude and a little desperate, and to my own horror, tears pressed hot behind my eyes. "Take it," he repeated. "Then tomorrow you can yell at me for being patronizing." I took it. That should have been the end of the shame for that night, but campus life loves an audience. As I turned to go, one of the event interns came around the corner, saw me with the half-ruined platter and the meal chit in my hand, and made a face like she had just solved a mystery. By morning, the version floating through the dorms was that I had been caught stealing from a donor reception. Not food because I was hungry. Stealing, full stop. People are always kinder to scandal than to need. By noon, somebody had taped a fast food coupon onto the Maple Court desk with a sticky note that read, "For emergency use." I peeled it off before anyone else could see. Then I went to the back office and sat on the floor between the printer paper boxes until my breathing stopped sounding ragged. That was when the rage came in. Not loud rage, the useful kind. Because the truth was uglier than the rumor. I had been surviving on whatever campus waste and loopholes I could outrun, while the university sent glossy emails about community care and student wellness. The lie made me look cheap. The truth made them look monstrous. Around the middle of the term, the Residence Life Office announced a series of alumni fundraising dinners in Halston Hall. Fancy tablecloths, student greeters, chamber music from the arts department. I got assigned to help at one of them because Maple Court was short on staffing, and as my supervisor put it, I presented well. That night, the dining hall looked nothing like the place where I usually slipped in. The lights were dimmed, the salad bar had turned into a flower display. Students in black work shirts moved around filling water glasses like this was a country club instead of the same room where boys usually spilled cereal at midnight. I tied on my apron and told myself to keep my eyes down. Then I saw the woman at the center table. Pearls, cream jacket, smile too polished to mean anything. Everyone kept orbiting her. A development officer whispered that she was married to the dean and chaired the family scholarship gala. What made me freeze was recognizing her from somewhere else. Weeks earlier, I had watched her from the side entrance of Halston during one of my usual slip-ins. She had come through the kitchen with two administrators while a cook asked if extra trays from a recruitment luncheon should be boxed for the commuter pantry. She barely glanced up before saying, "We can't encourage dependency. Staff can discard it." Discard it. Chicken, rice, roasted vegetables, rolls. Enough food to cover hungry students for a night. Discard it because appearing generous in the wrong direction might stain the institution's dignity. I remembered every syllable, and now she was smiling at donors about student success while I set bread near her elbow with hands that had once trembled over stolen soup. Halfway through the main course, one of the volunteer greeters tripped near the beverage station, and red punch splashed across the edge of the dean's wife's table. Not on her, just enough to send everyone into dramatic concern. I moved in automatically with a towel because I was nearest. She looked up at my name tag, then at my face, and her expression changed with the chilling smoothness of a door locking. "Oh," she said, just loud enough for the people nearest her to hear. "You're the girl from the incident." My hand stopped over the tablecloth. A donor couple looked from her to me. The development officer's smile thinned. "I'm here to clean the spill, ma'am," I said. She smiled without warmth. "Of course you are." The table went quiet. My face stayed still. Inside, something old and cold sat up straight. That evening after the donors left, I took off my apron in the service hallway and found my phone vibrating in my pocket. It was Hadley. When I answered, her voice came out thin and panicked. "Zara, don't come upstairs yet." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Why?" A pause, then, "Because someone posted your photo." The hallway suddenly felt too warm. "Posted it where?" "In the student housing group. From tonight? With that woman? They're saying you got called out for stealing again." I closed my eyes. That was the cliff. The kind that makes you understand humiliation is never satisfied with one stage when it can climb to another. If you are still here with me, stay close. Support matters more than people think when a girl is trying to survive quietly in a place built to erase her. Like this story, share it with someone who knows what pride costs, and subscribe if you believe silence can still win. Alright, now let me take you back. Because what they posted that night was only the spark. The fire started earlier, in a locked service corridor under Halston Hall, when I found out the university was hiding something far uglier than one hungry student slipping past a turnstile. When I was restocking paper cups near the catering prep room and heard two kitchen supervisors arguing through the half-open door. I said log the overage, one of them snapped. And I said I'm tired of watching sealed pans go into trash because some office upstairs wants the pantry numbers to stay low. The other shot back. I stopped moving. There are moments in life when your body knows something before your mind does. My hands went cold around the stack of cups. My heart slowed instead of racing. That always happened when the danger became real enough to stop being abstract. The first voice dropped lower. "You think I don't know it's ugly? But if the commuter pantry suddenly reports a spike, the board asks why. Then housing has to admit how many students lost meal access after the policy shift." The second voice laughed once without humor. "So the solution is what? Throw out food and pretend nobody's hungry." That is above my pay grade. I stepped back before they could come out and see me, but the words stayed lodged in me like glass. The next morning, my photo was everywhere. Not everywhere in the world, just everywhere that mattered when you were 20 and trapped on a campus that could make one rumor feel like weather. The student housing page had my picture from the donor dinner. Frozen at the exact second, the dean's wife looked at me with that thin smile. Somebody captioned it, "Guess some people can't stop taking what isn't theirs." By breakfast, there were comments. Maybe she should try a job. Maybe scholarship kids get too comfortable. My cousin worked dining services. She's been warned before. That one was a lie, but lies move faster when they flatter people's assumptions. I skipped my morning class and sat in the campus chapel because it was the only building where nobody expected a performance out of me. The place smelled faintly of old wood and candle wax. Sunlight hit the stained glass and scattered red and blue across the floor. I stared at it so hard my eyes hurt. I did not cry. At some point, Griffin found me there. He sat down at the far end of the pew first, close enough to be present, far enough to let me keep my dignity. Then he slid a folded printout toward me. "What is this?" I asked. "Screenshots." I opened them. They were from the housing page. More comments. Worse ones. One girl said I should be banned from dorm property. Another said people people like me always had a sob story ready. A third tagged a resident assistant and joked that Maple Court must be running a charity suite. I folded the pages back up with careful hands. I can handle comments, I said. Griffin's jaw shifted. That isn't why I printed them. He tapped the last page. At the bottom, under the pylon, someone using a staff account had replied, "This matter is already under review." I looked up. Staff, he said, not a student, which means somebody in housing decided to make your humiliation official. For a second, all I could hear was the old vent humming above us. Then I said, "Good." He blinked. "Good?" "Yes." I tucked the papers into my bag. "Because if they want review, then they can have review." He watched me with that quiet expression that always made me feel like he was listening to the words under my words. "You found something," he said. I stared ahead. "Not enough yet." "Zara, I heard 2 supervisors talking last night about food disposal, about hiding how many students lost meal access." He leaned back slowly. "That's not a rumor, that's a system." "Yes." "And you want to light it on fire?" "No." I stood up. "I want to turn the lights on." That afternoon, I went to work early and smiled at everyone. That was the first part of silent revenge. Calm compliance. People expect desperation to look frantic. They never know what to do with a woman who grows more composed after they try to corner her. I answered residents' questions. I logged maintenance requests. I handed a package to a sophomore who never looked me in the eye. Then, during my break, I walked to the Student Resource Center and asked if they had records on emergency meal assistance requests from the previous year. The graduate assistant at the desk, a tired woman named Ayla with chipped coral nail polish, frowned at her computer. "That data isn't public," she said. "I'm not asking for names. Why do you need it?" I held her gaze. "Because somebody is using shame to cover numbers." Something flickered across her face. Not surprise, recognition. She leaned back, glanced around the room, then lowered her voice. "Come back at closing." When I returned, she locked the office door behind me. "I should not be doing this," she said. "You don't have to." "I know." She pulled a binder from a drawer anyway. "But last semester, I helped 4 students file hardship requests after meal cuts, and all 4 were denied because the emergency pantry was supposedly sufficient support. The pantry was reporting low traffic. We all thought maybe students were too embarrassed to go. Then one of the volunteers told me they were being instructed to limit distribution counts in the logs if the food came from dining overage. I felt my pulse in my throat. Why? Because low pantry counts make the policy look humane. The room went very still. Isla opened the binder. Inside were inventory sheets, request notes, internal summaries. Not enough to blow open the entire university, but enough to show a pattern. Enough to prove that hunger on campus was not invisible by accident. "Can I photograph these?" I asked. She hesitated. "Not the names." "I don't want names." She nodded once. I took pictures of forms, dates, supply logs, denial language. My hands were steady now. Too steady. That was always how I got when anger sharpened into purpose. When I left, I knew 2 things. First, the dean's wife had chosen the wrong girl to embarrass in public. Second, proof alone would not save me if I moved too fast. Institutions survive by calling desperate people unstable. I needed sequence. I needed witnesses. I needed the right person to hear the truth before housing buried me under policy language. The next attack came from inside Maple Court. 2 nights later, I came back from a study room and found my desk drawer hanging open. My employee notepad was gone. So was the envelope where I kept my extra shift slips and the tiny cash tips parents sometimes pressed into my hand when I helped move boxes. Hadley was sitting on her bed with her laptop open, looking sick. "What?" I said. She swallowed. "Our resident director came by. He said there were concerns about desk conduct and he needed to inspect your station." My voice went flat. "He took my things. I tried to tell him it was personal stuff." "And?" Her eyes filled. "He said if you had nothing to hide, it wouldn't matter." I stood there so quietly that she started crying harder. That was the second kind of revenge. Access cut. They had tested whether I would panic when cornered at work and at home. Instead, I borrowed calm from the part of me that had been hungry for too long to fear embarrassment more than survival. I walked downstairs to the director's office and knocked once. He opened the door with his tie loosened and a look of administrative patience already arranged on his face. "Zara," he said, "I was meaning to speak with you." "I'm sure you were." He motioned to a chair. "There are concerns regarding unauthorized entry into dining facilities and misuse of staff visibility. Did you steal my drawer contents because of those concerns?" His expression tightened. "Inspecting a work area is not theft. My shift slips were in a sealed envelope. If you're suggesting impropriety, I'm suggesting boundaries." He smiled the way weak men do when they think calm belongs to them. "You should be careful with your tone." I looked around his office. On the side credenza sat the envelope, half hidden under a housing handbook, my name written across the front in black marker. He followed my eyes too late. "I'd like my property back," I said. He stepped toward the desk instead. "This situation can still be handled quietly if you cooperate." There it was. The real threat, not justice. Compliance. I let one breath pass, then another. "No," I said softly. "It can't." I left without raising my voice. 10 minutes later, I filed an email with Campus Human Resources documenting an unauthorized search of my personal materials by resident staff. I attached timestamps from my digital shift log, a statement from Hadley, and a photograph I had quietly taken of the envelope in his office while he turned to reach for a file. That was my first small win. By morning, he was not fired. Systems protect themselves more gracefully than that. But he was removed from resident-facing duty pending review, which was enough to change the social temperature overnight. People who had mocked me online started getting nervous when the words pending review appeared next to a staff member instead of next to me. The housing page went quiet for half a day. Then someone posted again. This time it was anonymous, and it was uglier. It claimed I was manipulating staff by pretending to be poor while secretly making cash under the table from off-campus tutoring. It hinted that I flirted with male employees for favors. It ended with a line about how girls like me always knew how to cry on command. I read it once, then I smiled, because that post told me something useful. It told me they were scared enough to switch from accusation to character assassination. They no longer wanted to prove I broke a rule. They wanted to make sure nobody trusted me if I told the truth. So I stopped defending myself. That was the social shift. Instead of chasing every lie, I chose 3 people carefully. Isla from the resource center, Griffin from maintenance, and one faculty advisor named Sella, who supervised the campus newspaper's investigative desk. I did not tell them a dramatic version. I did not perform. I gave them dates, screenshots, inventory photos, and the phrase I had overheard in the catering corridor. Hide how many students lost meal access after the policy shift. Sella read everything in silence. Then she asked, why bring this to me instead of posting it yourself? Because if I post it, I said, I become the story. If you verify it, the school does. For the first time, she smiled. That Friday night, the university hosted another donor event in Halston Hall. Smaller, more private. The dean's wife was there again, wearing blue this time, her pearls tucked against her throat like she thought elegance could substitute for decency. I was not scheduled to work it, but Sela texted me an hour before it started. Need you near the side entrance at 7, quietly. So I went. I stood in the service corridor in a plain black sweater, listening to the soft music from inside and the crash of pans from the kitchen beyond. Griffin was down the hall, pretending to fix a cartwheel. Ayla had already sent the pantry logs to Sela through a secure university archive request. We had enough to force questions. Maybe not enough yet to destroy them, but enough to crack the polished surface. At 7 exactly, I heard footsteps and low voices. Then the dean's wife came through the side corridor with 2 development officers and stopped dead when she saw me there. Her eyes narrowed. You. I folded my hands in front of me. Good evening. One of the officers looked between us. Is there an issue? She laughed lightly, but there was strain under it now. No issue, just a familiar face. Before I could answer, another voice cut through the hall behind her. There may actually be several issues. We all turned. Sela was standing at the corridor entrance with a press badge around her neck and a records folder in her hand. And in that second, when the dean's wife's face lost all color and the officers suddenly looked afraid to breathe, I understood that the biggest payoff was finally close enough to touch.